Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a Scalpel.
And this week, we solve some medical mysteries with House MD. Before we conduct the most unethical medical practice in New Jersey, remember you can help us on Mortified, the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, or following us on Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Layla.
Aaron.
What's your relationship to this program besides the wild Tumblr posts that occasionally come across our dashboards?
I watched a couple episodes here and there when it was on television. I quite liked it. I remember being very surprised to find out that not only is Hugh Laurie British, but a comedian.
Yeah.
And there are some beats in watching the episodes that we watched where you can tell.
Right.
The other thing is, I did not realize that this show takes place in New Jersey, and, as they say in that great musical Hamilton, everything is legal in New Jersey.
Oh, and that Hamilton reference will become relevant shortly.
It sure will.
To both of our delights. So I watched House as it aired. This was a show that became popular when I was, in my my very early teens, like preteens. I used to watch a lot of TV with my parents in the evening because I don't know, I didn't have cool things to do. Once I turned 13, 14 and went to high school, I stopped doing that as much. But like House and The Office, it was like that era of television that I got a lot of exposure to this. And like House was like the show that I in my mom mainlined mostly. And like, so I watched some of these episodes as they aired, and it just like had a big impact on me. Like Kal Penn was the first like Indian actor that I ever saw like in a mainstream program. And like, I just really loved this show. And then seeing how people talk about it on Tumblr as like House and Wilson being like the most toxic yaoi couple again in New Jersey, really was like, we should take another look at House. And I think we were both pretty excited about the results.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that House MD was what inspired you to go into medicine.
It's not. Listen, I think that House MD should never inspire anyone to go into medicine. So I wouldn't say that, but it did have, something of an impact on me growing up, being like, oh, medical stuff is weird and interesting. And I guess I don't really work in medicine anymore, but I did understand about 2/3 of all the terms they were using throughout these episodes, which is fun.
That's pretty impressive. As somebody who studied anatomy out of my mom's medical textbooks, I got like 28%.
The thing is that they use it largely as like gobbledygook, like they're just kind of spouting terms.
Yeah, to them, a blood clot is like a MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is, right? And like that's we could talk about the structure here in a sec, but yeah, that is how this is structured as a way that's just like here's a medical term that's going to mean nothing to the audience, but it's just going to be a plot device for the next 5 minutes until we need to do another test or something wild and incomprehensible happens.
Exactly. So for context for our audience, we watched the top 5 episodes on IMDb in chronological order. So there's quite a bit.
Not just like, it was just some guy's top 5 listing, right? It's not like a fan, like, it's not like many people came together and like, here are the best 5 episodes. It's just some dude.
Yeah, so congrats, some dude on IMDb. I would say this was pretty good television.
I'm honestly very pleased with the selection we got. We got a little bit of the early seasons, we got a little bit of the middle seasons, and then a little bit of the later seasons. That kind of gave us a good smorgasbord of what batshit stuff happens on this program.
Oh yeah, God, there's a lot of batshittery.
Yeah, so like, I don't know how we want to do the plot summary. I know it's my turn to do the plot summary, but I feel like there's like not a whole. We could summarize each of the. We ended up watching 6 episodes because of the special thing that happened in episode 5. But we can just kind of give some highlights. I've got some highlights listed on our outline. Do you have any highlights that you want to call off the top of your head?
I mean, I think we can go episode by episode, but just give like big beats. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I agree with you. So episode 1 is called, let me get my notes open. Episode 1 is called 3 Stories. And that is season 1, episode 21. And in this, House is approached by his ex-wife, Stacy, who's like, hey, my new husband has a weird case that I think requires your attention. Could you pretty please help me? And House is like, quote, I'm not too busy. I'm not sure I want him to live.
Right. Really good introduction to the character, IMO.
Really great. But so he then proceeds to have like lecture duty where he goes and talks to the residents. And he tells 3 stories, and in those 3 stories, he likes to rotate the cast of characters. One of the characters is Carmen Electra from Baywatch, which is really good. And then at the end of the episode, you find out that one of the stories is the backstory of why he has a limp, and why he is in pain all the time. He suffers from chronic pain and is addicted to Vicodin. That is like a big part of his character. And he does come around and agree to take a look at his ex-wife's husband. So that is the episode. And the highlight definitely is just fucking Carmen Electra with her pants off being there.
Yeah, that was great. One thing I guess we should say up the front, this is like very explicitly a Sherlock Holmes thing, right? His name is House, like Holmes. His best friend is Dr. James Wilson, as opposed to John Watson. And he has a Vicodin addiction, whereas Sherlock Holmes had a cocaine addiction, I believe. But like it is taking that like investigative aspect and applying it to medical science, right? So just for anybody who's never seen this program. But yeah, I really like this as an introduction to House. I had never seen this episode, but like it was a very good way to be like, okay, hey, here's what the whole conceit of the show is. There's this one really smart doctor who goes around, and his whole thing is that he's a quote unquote diagnostician, which is not a thing in medicine. No. All doctors do diagnoses, but like there's not like really a specialist who is like, like solving medical mysteries. That's a made up thing. But I think it works really well for the conceit of the show. And like it shows us like why House is so good at what he does. He's like juggling all 3 of these people that all have 3 different leg issues and like trying to figure out what the problem is. And we also like get him solving a 4th issue, which is like why the lecturer he's replacing has been sick constantly, and it turns out it's like lead paint in the kid's cup that he's been drinking out of, which is very fun. And he is like solving that while doing the lecture for the students. But yeah, like it's just a really solid episode into what his whole deal is, because he sucks ass. He's like such a huge asshole, but also he's like a genius, so that's why they keep him around.
Right, and he's did you watch BBC Sherlock?
No, but my wife did.
Okay, so I was gonna solicit your opinion as to like the portrayal of Sherlock as an asshole, and why, because House, I used to love BBC Sherlock. BBC Sherlock, and I mean this clinically, was a hyperfixation for me when I was a senior in high school, to the point of disruption, right? Like it was the show I was, there's not a lot of episodes of that show, so you have to understand. Not a lot to go on. That was around the same time I was going through my Ayn Rand phase.
Oh, no.
So I was real into the whole, like, lone wolf asshole kind of thing. And I would love to talk to your wife afterwards if she's also seen House, because House is such a charming asshole, because he does kind of wear his heart on his sleeve. It's not hard to tell when he's invested in something, and he's gonna come to the right conclusion, and that is the reason that his team trusts him and continues to put up with his horse shit. Whereas BBC Sherlock, he's just mean.
Yeah, he just kind of sucks.
Yeah, he just sucks ass real bad.
And I'm sure there is some sort of like autistic read on BBC Sherlock as him just like not understanding social cues.
No, honest to God. Like if sorry, maybe. I don't want to interrupt you and interrupt that thought.
No, please.
I just want to be really cautious about that kind of thing, because it's like, yeah, maybe there is a little bit of that, but he's also just a cunt. Parentheses
Wow.
negative. Like, it's truly, he's just like, it's not that he's so focused on the thing that he's like fixated on it, and it's, you know, like, you could read it as a quote unquote special interest. He's like manipulative and conniving, and consciously so.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't seem as fun. Right.
Yeah, it's less
I mean,
fun.
I've seen other interpretations of Sherlock where he's not mean, like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock. He's not. He is kind of a weirdo, but like he's not like a dick.
Oh, where he and Jude Law look like they're about to kiss the entire series of movies? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, the one where he interrupts Jude Law's wedding and he tries to sabotage his fiance's. Never mind about what I said about not being manipulative.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I was just curious about that read, because there's so many different Sherlock interpretations, and like House's, I don't know, I find him so charming, and later we'll talk about his misogyny, because it's very interesting.
Yes, I think that'll be a fun thing to do here in a second in our talking points. Episode 2 is called, let me get my notes up, Euphoria Part 1. We didn't watch Part 2 because, you know, we were on a time crunch, but basically it's in Season 2. There is this cop who, you know, starts laughing. His whole deal is like he starts laughing and he like starts bleeding out of his eye. And they just go through a whole bunch of weird diagnoses. And we don't actually, you know, I don't actually know what happens, but like the cop does die at the end. And this is interesting because, also one of the people one of House's like team, his name is, of course, Eric Foreman, like goes to investigate the cop's apartment, because in this world, you have to understand, it's normal for the doctors to go out to patients' homes and investigate their like belongings, a thing that no doctor in the last 100 years has done, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm sure
they're residents, they're investigators.
Mm-hmm. What can't they do? And like I liked this episode because like we also get this like you know, racial tension, right? Like Foreman is a black guy, and he's like, oh yeah, I grew up with cops like you. There's a bit where Chase is the Australian doctor, that's also on House's team, and he's just like, you know, they're talking about the elevated heart rate and the euphoria, and you know, Foreman's just like, you know, maybe what if it's drugs? And Chase is like, well, he's a cop, and then Foreman's like, oh, good point. How about drugs? And like he turns out to be right, like, because the cop is growing weed in his apartment, and he's actually using pigeon poop to like fertilize the weed, which is like the cliffhanger of that episode. But yeah, like it's just a really fun one in this episode to like simulate the damage that the cop had. The reason that they have to use this MRI is that the police officer gets shot and there's like bullet fragments in his skull, and they're trying to figure out like if the certain type of bullet fragment will be magnetic. And in order to figure out if they can do this MRI, they have to figure out like if the bullets will get pulled out during the MRI. So House does take a gun loaded with the same kinds of bullets the cop got shot with, and goes down to the morgue and shoots a corpse in the head. And as it turns out, MRI is magnetic. The bullets do get pulled out of his head, and it ruins the MRI machine.
And then Cuddy, who is the like head of the hospital, she is like, "Hey, how are you going to explain to this corpse's family that their cancer patient who died had bullet holes in his head?" And House is like, "He donated his body to science." He's such an asshole. But again, it's like so fun. And we did leave off like before we could figure out what the actual like diagnosis was. But the fun thing about this episode stopping with the cop dying is that it sets a countdown timer, because they've basically been able to track Foreman's symptoms, like at an offset from what the cop was experiencing. So They have a timeline for how Foreman's condition is going to go. And then the cop dies, and it's like, oh, there is a timer now to Foreman dying.
Right. And like the thing about the cop dying is that like before all this, he was like screaming in agony, and Foreman is like the only one just being like, please give him more pain medicine. And, you know, they point out like, would you like to be reminded about all the pain you're about to be in? Like, please keep Foreman quarantined in there, and please give that man his pain meds, because Foreman's just like really desperate to not be in that pain. So much so that he like infects Cameron with a needle that also touched him, and then that turns out to be fine. They're just like, actually no, it's probably unlikely that you were infected, but like it gives Cameron a reason to go back to the apartment and investigate. It is wild. It's nobody here is practicing medicine ethically. It's so funny.
No, not for even a hot second. Was this the episode? I think this was the episode where it's just so we, again, just dropped into these episodes, and it's been years since we, like, watched House and had any, like, real recollection of who the characters are, other than House himself. And this episode was just so masterfully showed the dynamic between all of these characters. Like, we watched 45 minutes, and I was like, I know exactly who these people are and what their relationships are like. And, like, yeah, I might not have the context, but I know what to expect from them. And that is just such good episodic writing.
Right. I think there is something that's been lost in the last, 8 to 10 years, where everything has to be on a streaming service, so it's very compressed. And, like, you have to kind of get everybody's, like, character like down from the beginning, and like if they are allowed to have an arc, it has to be like very compressed. And in the same way, like you can see how these characters like change and evolve, and like their dynamics, kind of remain the same, but they also, their relationships changed based off of their initial, dynamic, and like that having new shit happen to them, and then like seeing how their character arc plays out over a season. That's like what really got me into House, because I was like, oh, this thing that happened last episode, is affecting this current episode, but this is going to keep on going and going until the very end of the season, where it will culminate. And like, that's, that was my introduction to storytelling in a big way. And like, going back to it and being like, having, some, nearly probably more than 15 years of like, understanding media at this point, and going back and saying, okay, House isn't actually that complicated, in fact it's a little goofy, but like still seeing how they pull that off, and like that, I just really like that. And I do wish that there was more television like that had these like the ability to run for 8 seasons 24 episodes each.
God, do you remember? That's the thing. Like right before we got on this call, I was like, damn, if only House wasn't 8 seasons long, I would actually maybe consider watching it, just because it's like so delightful. But 8 seasons, 24 episodes a season, that has too many episodes. That's 160.
It's 177, I believe, is the amount of episodes they actually got out. I think maybe they shortened some seasons there at the end.
I think so. That's too many.
Yeah, like I think The Good Place, like with its like pretty solid like 4 season run, and like ending where it wanted to is a pretty good standard. But like just like nobody has the this is coming up with Disney's The Acolyte, right? Where like it kind of sucked. Listen, I'm not one of those fucking people who is like I hate Star Wars because it's woke, obviously. I hate Star Wars because it's often bad, and because I want it to be good. But like they did kind of find their footing there at the end of The Acolyte, and I think that like a second season, now that these characters are a little bit better established, would maybe be somewhat better. And like I don't think that's going to happen, because Disney's going to say, oh, well, this didn't get the critical acclaim that Andor did. And, we're not going to allow this program to really find its footing, so we're just going to axe it. And I think that sucks. I think that's no good.
I think this is where you get into like balancing budget and the amount of like stuff that happens, because House, the first couple seasons of House are not that high budget. Like they're that's pretty good television, but it relatively takes place in a hospital. The production quality is like pretty good, but it's not the most high budget show on television. It got more budget as it went on. The problem with modern streaming services and kind of like putting out these seasons at a time, and they're short seasons, and you're expecting critical acclaim and you're expecting all these things, is that I feel like companies are investing just a ton of money up front, and there's no room for growth. And that sucks, I think, especially with a franchise like Star Wars, because if you go back and watch the first Star Wars movies, there are some aliens walking around, and I shit you not, they have the Party City masks.
Right. I mean, that's literally how that happened, right? The aliens that are now in Star Wars lore happened because George Lucas went down to a store and was like, well, these are the fucking masks they had, so. Yeah,
so like, and there's just no room for that right now. That I think that is the reason shows don't have room for growth. And then that puts the burden on the audience in like an oversaturated market, because we don't have like 5 channels that we watch. It's like, well, there's 15 streaming services, and if I'm going to invest my precious time into watching, 6 hours of a show or whatever, I need to guarantee that it's good and that I can binge it. Rather than you come home, it's 6 o'clock, oh, what's on ABC? Oh, House, or someone has it on in the background, and then you get hooked.
Right. And that's ultimately how I ended up watching like a lot of weird shows with my family, like Numbers. Like nobody remembers that fucking program, but I watched it. I watched the hell out of it. Yeah, I just wish that there was. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I watched a lot of Animal Planet that way.
Excellent. Yeah. Just things like that are like on in the background that like you don't like. It's not like appointment TV, but like after a certain amount of time, you do start to get invested, and I think that's good.
Yeah, and it's also nice to have like mid-budget, mid-good shows, because famously, I am really like, folks recommend great television to me and great movies to me all the time. I'm too tired usually for anything that like is of quality. I just want to watch like garbage, and that's why House was great, because it was like, it's not, I don't have to think that hard. It's just kind of dramatic, and I don't understand what's going on because I'm not a doctor. And even if I was a doctor, I would understand even less, because again, they're just using conditions as like MacGuffins to further their like plot. Right. But it's like a fun character drama, and there's cool effects, and like House is an asshole, and it's funny, so I miss this level of television.
Yeah, 100%. Do you want to tackle House's Head?
Yeah, so House's Head, that is season 4. This guy's top 5 did not include a season 3 episode, so whatever. No, this episode opens with You a Freak, parentheses, Nasty Girl by Chiggy, which I think is really good.
This episode has 2 different stripteases, which I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, go all in, right? So House, it opens on House being in a strip club and very quickly realizing that he does not know how he ended up in the strip club. And then he, once the dancer helps him identify that he has a head injury and is missing about 4 hours of his memory, he walks outside and realizes that he was involved in a bus crash. And then, he knows that he saw something, and was that someone showed some sort of symptom or something when the bus crashed. And so he makes it his mission to like detain as many of the patients as he can by saying they have not malaria.
It's meningitis.
They have meningitis, which is just very funny. And it was at that point I was like, the least realistic thing about this show is the fact that the insurance brokers keep letting him get away with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Somebody would have come after him at this point.
But so he says everyone has meningitis, but like that doesn't work. So he has to go through all of these different hoops and hurdles to like try and piece together his memory of the event and figure out what it was that he saw. And along the way, the Australian, oh my God, what is his Chase? Which that is your note for him, the Australian, which that's what he is.
Yep.
He apparently down in Melbourne got trained in medical hypnosis, so he hypnotizes House.
Yep.
So we're kind of in and out of consciousness with House, and then House continues to try increasingly extreme hypnosis techniques on himself, including like submerging himself in water and popping a bunch of Alzheimer's medicine.
Yes.
Yes, and overdosing on it. This man almost beefs it in so many episodes,
Right.
usually of his own doing. But what he ends up piecing together is that the thing that he saw on the bus is Wilson's girlfriend,
Right.
and that she is hospitalized at a different hospital, and I believe dies.
Yes, no, she does die. Like, that's referenced to a later episode we're going to talk about. But, yeah, no, I actually, like, these couple of episodes really, like, strung together emphasize, like, how much misdirection there is in this show. Like, you know, in mysteries, often they'll give you clues as to why the mystery, you know, what is actually really happening with the mystery. And I don't think House does that, like, in a great way. I think they mostly just do it to be like, and here's the twist. Like, I don't think this is the kind of like smart television where if you were paying attention, you could figure it out. Like, I kind of figured it out, you know, because they were like, here's this necklace that's made of a material. And I was like, oh, okay, got you. But like, yeah, I just really like the misdirection and like weird ways that they portray House's like, you know, cognitive state in his like thought process. Like in the, you know, three stories episode, you know, it keeps switching, you know, actors and perspectives, and like the students are also like present, even though he's talking, you know, he's telling them a story, they're also physically in the room. That's really fun. And like the constant switching of the like being on the bus and the perspectives of that's really fun. Also has the hilarious scene where Cuddy shows up in the bus and House is like, what's happening? And she's like, oh, this is a fantasy. And he's like, if this is a fantasy, why aren't you wearing this? And then now she's in a sexy outfit. She does a dance for him. And then as she's about to take her bra off, she stops. And he's like, wait, why did you stop? And she's like, you would rather be diagnosing your patient than having this fantasy. You're fucked up.
Yeah, which again, like that in that moment, I was like, his misogyny is so interesting because it's disingenuous. Like,
Right.
Right, and it's at first when he was, because Wilson was like, well, so the interesting thing about this episode is that Amber actually appears in House's hypnosis very early on. Like in the first round of hypnosis, she's there, and she is the answer, right? And it's interesting when you get the reveal, because you're like, oh no, she was at the forefront of his memory. He just didn't understand why.
Right.
And that was one of the misdirects. But the other thing is, like, you know, every time Wilson's like, is she there? Is she clothed? Are you sure? And House makes these, like, really disingenuous, misogynistic jokes. And it sounds like everyone around him takes him seriously. But when actually confronted with, one, the stripper in the beginning of the episode, and two, Cuddy doing that sexy dance, one, with the stripper in the beginning of the episode, he's not paying attention to her at all.
Right.
He's asking her diagnostic questions to help him figure out why he's missing a bunch of memory. And he's like not even a little bit distracted by anything she's doing. She's like dancing on him. And then with Cuddy, yeah, he pays attention to her, but I think a later episode shows us that that's more about it being Cuddy than it is about what she was doing.
Right. 100%. And, like, I think that's true of the way that House is, like, will occasionally make, like, kind of racist comments. He is, like, trying to be an asshole, but, like, he doesn't really feel that way. Like when he's talking with Andre Brower, who shows up in a later episode, he like makes a comment about, you know, slavery or something stupid, and like Andre's just like, yeah, I expected this from you, because like he does that to try to like get a rise out of people, to try to like put on this front. And it's really interesting to you know, be like, okay, this character is like trying to do something, but like he actually gives a shit about things a lot. And I think that's why House works for me in a big way, is that it is actually very sincere, even though its protagonist like tries to be an asshole and a jerk.
The episode that we'll get to with Andre Brower, like the whole crux of it is getting to why House lashes out in the way that he lashes out, and putting him, it's kind of a bottle episode, right? Because it's putting him in a contained environment where he can't escape or walk away from or go drink off or take Vicodin through or lean on any of his crutches other than the actual crutch for his leg, to like deflect from his the problems with the core of his character. Do you have anything else for House's head?
The actual medical techniques in this show are sometimes quite bad. House ties a tourniquet around Amber in the flashback, and I would not trust that tourniquet to save a limb. Sorry, Hugh. Should have tried harder.
Should have tried harder, Hugh Laurie. Do you want to talk us through both sides now?
Yeah. Basically, this is the left brain and right brain episode, which is very silly. Like you said in your note,
so obsessed with the hemisphere shit around that time.
This is also when I feel that like the words introvert and extrovert became popular in like the in conversation, where it's just like, oh yeah, this is the way that people are. It's the 2000s and we understand science, capital S.
And the whole Myers-Briggs too. That was around Myers-Briggs time.
100%. And like, yeah, this is where House believes that he has had sex with Cuddy, and like it turns out this is actually like a hallucination because of his bad addiction to Vicodin. But like he spends the whole time trying to get her to get mad at him so they can like have a conversation and feel like, like figure out what their relationship is. And like it's a weird episode. But also you can kind of see that like the actual like medical mystery is not the most important thing here. Like there's a weird bit where like the patient's like left hand like hits his girlfriend at one point, but later on when she like is like, oh hey, by the way, it's the deodorant, that's the key, and then the left hand goes and like strokes her face even though like he's not fully in control of it. Completely wild episode, but also like very much like showing that the interest of the program is not about like the actual medical mysteries. It's like the dynamic between the characters.
Yeah, which we should be okay. We should be clear. The patient in this there's two patients in this episode, and one of them is that young man who has quote unquote alien hand syndrome.
Sure.
Where his left hand only listens to his right brain, which is like the intuitive one, and his left hand is the one he can actually control. And it is so stupid because his right hand wants to play air guitar, and that's how he keeps it from like knocking away medical equipment.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's an old man that is also there, and he has he has pancreatic cancer, but he's basically used as a cudgel between Cuddy and House because House wants to skirt clinic duty, and Cuddy is like, no, I'm going to give him your personal phone number and make him show up to your office for clinic hours. And basically the whole medical mystery is that House figures out that the reason he thought the young man had pancreatic cancer was because he intuitively knew that the old man had pancreatic cancer, and that's why it was like at the forefront of his mind the entire time. But the framing of the episode is just silly. But as you said, it doesn't matter because the thing it was trying to get at was this whole thing with Cuddy. Right.
And it culminates because the last three episodes we're going to talk about all, are back to back, like in the story. Because like at the end, it culminates with him realizing that like, oh, he never actually, had sex with Cuddy. He like just had like this Vicodin induced, hallucination. And like he starts seeing ghosts from his colleagues who died, which include Wilson's girlfriend Amber and Cal Penn, who famously shot himself in character. Like that's how his character died, and that episode traumatized me for life because I was like, wow, that's how they took out my favorite Indian doctor. Goddamn. Actually, Cal Penn had to go work for Barack Obama. That's why he left House. But wild thing that happened. But like, it is interesting to be like, oh yeah, here's some cameos of these characters. You're having like a bunch of trauma, and eventually House goes through this 2-episode arc where he detoxes and tries to get over his Vicodin addiction in rehab, which is, it's interesting, right? Like there's a lot of wacky, silly stuff that happens in this program, but at the heart of it, it is very interested and like cares deeply about like the well-being of its characters, which is why, this episode 5, ends with House's and Cuddy's relationship like being like, oh, okay, did they finally actually hook up? And then being like, oh no, Cuddy still cares for House because House is like fully not there because he's hallucinating. I thought that the conceit was kind of silly, but like ultimately it's the characters.
Yeah, exactly. And so the end of it ends in this really wonderful, like really vulnerable moment where House admits to both Cuddy and to Wilson that he needs help, and Wilson takes him to rehab. Right. Which is where we get. Do you have anything else to say about both sides now before we get into?
No, I just I think it's time to meet our friend. Can you do your LMM impression for us, please?
I don't know. Do I have an impression of Limbo Miranda other than being able to do the whole? I I can give you the lights up the Washington Heights up at the break of day. Like he hits those fucking consonants so hard. Lin-Manuel, so okay. Season 6, episode 1 broken. House goes to rehab, and if the doctor at rehab is Andre Braugher. If you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that is oh my god, what is his character name from Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
It's the police captain. I don't remember his name.
Captain. Fuck me. What's the captain? We love him.
I'm looking this up. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Andre
Holt. Captain
Braugher. Holt, you're right.
Yeah, so Captain Holt. And then House goes into his room, and his roommate is a young Lin-Manuel
Miranda. Yeah, when I saw that name come up in the credits, I was like, I can't believe this. This would have aired in like 2008, 2009.
So this is in the Heights era.
Right. Like he is like not yet done Hamilton. He has not yet like had his big ascendancy. So it is just wild because he's doing the same shit.
Wait, is it in the Heights era or is it Bring It On era? Hold on. In the Heights Broadway. When was the Broadway run?
Open on Broadway in March
on Broadway
2008. So this is right as
Yes, so this is literally in the Heights era Lin-Manuel Miranda. Young, spunky Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is, his whole character's thing is that he doesn't shut the fuck up and he keeps improvisationally rapping.
Which is the character that Lin-Manuel Miranda gave to America for the next 10 years. It is
just so funny. He does, listen, Mr. Manuel Miranda, he needed, I think Hamilton, he was not prepared for the attention that Hamilton brought him.
Right.
And he took on too many contracts with Disney because he just kind of became the, like, all Hispanic people's, like,
right.
composer for the Disney Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not great. And like Hamilton, we've talked about it, aged like wilted spinach. I don't think Lin-Manuel Miranda's a bad person, though. Like, I think he's fine, and he really put his whole pussy in it.
Right. I think a lot of the hate for him comes from the hate for Hamilton, which is understandable, but oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, except for Miku Binder, Thomas Jefferson, that was a pop culture moment that I love very much.
Yeah, I'm glad that happened. But yeah, no, I like his performance in this because he is 100% just being like a weird, annoying Puerto Rican rapper who needs to be like his whole deal is that like he doesn't want to be in the psych unit because he won't take his meds because it like prevents him from being like a good artist. And like for the era that this came out in, like that being wrong is like kind of cool, right? Like if I expected anyone to be like, oh, taking your meds like represses you, it would be like a piece of media that came out in the late 2000s because like that was this like stupid belief at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was peak auteur era of like, this was also the peak like romanticization of Van Gogh and his struggles. Mm-hmm. This was very much like mental illness makes you edgy and cool. Like, you know, I'm an emo kid, non-conforming as can be. Like that is this era. Mm-hmm. And I thought the same thing as you did. I was like, wow, seeing the stigma against taking SSRIs like pretty handily dismantled in like a pretty popular piece of television is really crazy because I started taking SSRIs 5 or so years later. I was on Lexapro for a little while, and I remember that being one of the things when my therapist suggested medication to me, and like, mind you, I needed medication. I was at a very bad place in my life. That was the first concern I had. I was like, well, what if it changes me? And then I thought the way Andre Braugher dismantled that for House was kind of the way my therapist did it for me, which is it'll change you and you want to keep being unhappy. Like, mm-hmm. like you want to not change from being miserable. And it's like, oh yeah, shit, you're right.
Right. No, explicitly bringing up the fact that he'd be like, yeah, hey, Van Gogh would probably still have his ear intact. He would still be painting and he'd be alive. Like, I liked that a lot. God, it's just, this whole bit is like really good. And I remember these are the episodes that I watched live. I believe they aired back to back because like this is the season opener, but like it is just like this like capsule episode of House, like, both trying to at first start a revolution on the psych ward, which is incredible, and then Andre Braugher like kind of takes him out, and then like, trying to develop this like relationship with this woman who is visiting her sister who like hasn't spoken in a long time. There's this bit though, like where this other guy comes in and he believes he's a superhero, and the whole deal with him is that like there's this one doctor on the unit who is just like, who does a thing that you shouldn't do. If you're dealing with somebody who's delusional, you should not just like try to prove them wrong. You should be like, hey, I understand that you have this delusion, but I'm not seeing it that way, and kind of like try to work from there. What this doctor does is like, oh, hey, he calls himself Freedom Master. He's like, hey, Freedom Master, could you move this piano for me if you're so strong? And then House is like, hey, what the fuck, man? And, like House is right in here. But then what he does is that he accidentally reinforces the delusion instead of like, trying to dismantle it in a gentle way. And like he takes him to a park, and they go to like one of those big fan rides, and they fly up in the air. And ultimately, Freedom Master, tries to believe that he actually can fly, and jumps off of like the parking garage and gets hurt very badly. Did you catch why Freedom Master has his psychosis?
His wife died, right?
Yes. But why? Why did his wife die?
Oh, I did catch that.
So they say, because Freedom Master's whole thing is that he has to protect people from evil. And what they say is like, hey, Freedom Master, evil does exist. Your wife died. A lot of evil people hurt good people that day.
Is it 9/11?
That is, I believe Freedom Master's wife died at 9/11, which is a wild thing to insinuate.
My God.
We need to watch Come From Away.
We really do need to watch. We should slot it in somewhere, because Aaron and I talked about it, but like we talk about 9/11 a lot on this show for never directly interacting with any media about it.
Right. It casts a shadow. We for whatever reason cover a lot of media from the years 2001 to like 2016, right? And like 9/11 unfortunately casts quite a pall over especially early 2000s and late 2000s media. And like it's just another thing that's just like, hey, why did you put 9/11 in this program?
Do you remember? Oh my God. I wonder what, I don't have any good demos on our 30-person listenership. I do wonder how many of them are younger than us though, because I'll never forget fucking trying to change the name of French fries to freedom fries around that era. Like, American patriotism really went off the deep end after 9/11.
And we're still dealing with it, unfortunately.
Still dealing with it. But yes, so yeah, all that happened, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is there the entire time, sometimes helping House do all the shenanigans he's up to doing, and like every time they go back to their room, Lin-Manuel Miranda's like, what's the next plan? And it's like, every time it's something different. And at one point, House is like, hey, do you know how to cheek a pill? And Lin-Manuel Miranda's like, no. He's like, oh, that's too bad for you. And then in the next scene, they stage a physical confrontation.
It's not really a staged fight. No, it is a fight.
Lin-Manuel Miranda turns to House and he says, make it good. Make it real. And then House decks him in the nose. And then they beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, he comes back and his face is like fully swollen. It's incredible.
Again, Lin-Manuel Miranda's putting his whole pussy into this role.
No,
it was really
he's doing it. Yeah, no. And like, this carries over into the next episode, right? House is dealing with like feeling guilty about, this hurting this guy, even though he was trying to help. And like this is like the character moment where, Andre Braugher talks to him and is like, hey, you need to seriously try to get better instead of just trying to like game the system. And like eventually this culminates in like the whole unit doing a talent show. And like this is where I just like the sincerity of this program really comes through, because like they have all of the people in the psych ward do this talent show, and like all of the talents are like a little bit silly. Like one of them does the Macarena with one of the psychiatrists or the doctors that's on the unit, and that's like cute, but like not impressive. It's the Macarena. But like there's another group of like patients who do this like what's a quartet minus one? A trio?
A trio, yes.
They do like a singing trio. One of the guys who doesn't like really talk but he's like does like a clapping thing. He just like does a bunch of like slaps on his arms and legs and like does like basically a drum solo, which is like, you know, I could absolutely see other media of the time, you know, playing that as like, oh wow, this guy's so crazy and cringe, but like it's played completely like, you know, earnestly, and I love that. That's
an actual art form.
Right, and it is, right? But like, I can see for the time, people just being like, "Oh, that's a silly thing that a silly man in a psych ward would do."
Right. But instead, it's you know, played really straight.
Right.
Well. So, as we said, Lin-Manuel Miranda is an improvisational rapper, and throughout this episode where the talent show has come up, the psychiatrist did encourage him to write his raps down. She's like, hey, you know, this is a pretty big thing, like you should prepare. He's like, nah, man, it'll come to me, you know, because again, he thinks that his talent is all improvisational, and he refuses to write it down. He gets up on that stage, and Aaron, he does blank. He
sure does blank, because, you know, the doctor's been telling him, hey, you gotta prepare your stuff, you gotta write this down, and eventually you know, he doesn't. He ends up blanking, and then House from the back of the room is like, okay, and he like completes the rhymes.
Mama got sick, cliche, ain't it? Now I'm a manic Hispanic, I'm trying to make it work, but the doctors think I'm lazy.
My roommate is a jerk.
Dr. House is in the house, y'all. Give it up for Dr. House to the stage, y'all. Aging Dr. House to the stage, y'all. Are you there, Dr. House? It's on. Bring it on. On. Oh, yeah, he's coming to the stage, y'all. It's Dr. House on the remix. Dr. House on the remix.
And then Alvy's like, okay, Dr. House is in the house, y'all. It's Dr. House on the remix. And they go and do the rap together whenever Alvy blanks, and it's like, it's very silly, but also it is played completely sincerely.
Did you watch that episode because you saw my note?
Yes. I was like, holy shit, how did I not like remember that, because that is a thing that happened, and like I just didn't know who Lin-Manuel Miranda was when I watched it, but I went back and watched the whole thing, and it's really good.
It's good, and there's also like
the
a
rap's
subplot.
Not good, but like the emotion is good.
No, the rap is excellent. Okay. I don't know what you're talking about. It's incredible. But,
all right, well, I'll put it in the show notes, and listeners, you can judge.
Yeah. No, it's you know, it's completely goofy, but yeah, these episodes are really good, right? And what happens is again, it is a bottle episode, because the thing is that House has been confronted multiple times over his shitty behavior by everyone in the show over and over and over and over and over again. And like, it takes taking him away from every distraction. No more diagnosing, no more pills, no more like people that kind of like are accustomed to his bullshit. They had to isolate him in this psychiatric ward and in rehab, and like really put him through the paces. And he has to come to the realization that he needs to get better, and he needs to want to get better on his own. And like, having gone through like a mental health journey, you have to want to get better. No one can fix you. You have to fix you. And so, I don't know, I thought it was like really well written and really well handled for, again, 2008, the same era where we got fucking Sucker Punch, right?
Right.
A movie where a woman was like, has like a lobotomy delusion.
Right. It's, yeah, no, this is the era of Zack Snyder, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I just the sincerity that this show brings, like, because eventually, right, the very end of this is like they show how other people get released in this, you know, in this program, the psych ward, right? Is they have this like the little cake day, and they're like, you know, they all have like a cake to celebrate this person's release, and at the very end, they're like, you know, we're sorry to see, you know, they say like,
it's like, we're happy to see you go, and we hope to never see you
right,
again.
You know, we say, yeah, we hope to, quote, never see you again. And they always like, they cheer that bit at the end. And like, that is like the kind of like goofball, but like very sincere shit that absolutely would happen on a psych ward. And like I really love that because they do that for everybody. They do it for all the other characters, and then they eventually do it for Greg when he finally gets out. Gregory House. Sorry, I called him Greg because I was just feeling very close to him at this moment.
Very intimate,
right? But they do this for House because that's like I feel like very good character writing. Like you're building up to that moment by foreshadowing it. So like when you see House finally do this, and he does his Hugh Laurie smash his face into the cake comedy bit. It's like funny and silly and like very, very sweet in a way that I don't think is, maybe it's a little saccharine, but like I also think that when you're dealing with all the kind of like heavy stuff that happens throughout the program, right? Like, because this is all based around the fact that like he's like hooking up with this woman who like it has become deranged, or not deranged, but what's the other word?
It's her sister that's like gone.
Right? Yeah. Well, it's her sister-in-law.
Yes, her sister-in-law it's her best friend whose brother she married because she didn't want to lose track of her best friend.
Right.
So she's in like this kind of weird sort of loveless marriage with kids, specifically for the sake of her friend who went like mute randomly and like just grew distant over the last like 10 years.
Right.
But yeah, House started hooking up with her, and then at the end, the mute lady's condition got resolved because Freedom Master had clocked that she wanted her music box, and then when he gave her music box back, she was able to like speak and play cello again.
Right.
And then the family, the sister, the brother, and then the German lady that House was hooking up with, they all decided to move to Arizona.
Right. And then House is very sad, and like House being sad and then not immediately turning to drugs or like lashing out is the thing that that like Andre Bauer's like, okay, you're good, you can go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and I also like you calling him Greg on X, and it also reminded me that like I actually really like the touch of everybody calling him Greg in the beginning in this psych ward, like all the doctors and stuff,
right?
Because I feel like the name House, especially if you're watching this, like as it's playing out, like 6 seasons in, the name House has almost been like deified,
right?
Where it's like, oh, well, something's wrong. Like you go to House, who's like the god of this hospital, and now you've taken him out of that context and you've just put him back into real life, and he's just Greg.
Yeah, no, 100%.
He only gets to be House again as he starts to recover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like he actually gets called in to like do doctor stuff, but like, yeah, it is such an interesting and effective way to be like, no, we're not talking about the doctor that we've built up for 5 seasons as like this medical genius. This is like a guy who's dealing with his addiction and like his own loneliness that he's imposed upon himself, and like we want you to take that seriously. Even though this show is like inherently unserious, like it's good. It's really good.
TV.
This is
good TV.
This is actually like House being released from rehab is my canonical or not canonical. It's canonical to me. This is the way that the program ended to me. I don't care about anything else that happens after season 6. That's House's like that's the way that I like to imagine House's story ended, which is silly, but
No, I agree with you because I don't know if you noticed this, but in the episodes after like the first trio kind of dissolved, because House has his 3 people, right? He has Chase is there, fucking Foreman is there,
yep, and Cameron, who is the girl. Who is very much a Sakura figure, unfortunately.
Oh yeah,
she gets kind of done dirty. I think she comes back in the later seasons and is like treated better, but she's often like walked over a lot during the program.
Yeah, Sakura fucking rip.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we jump from season 2 to 4, we get this new trio of Taub, 13, and Kuttner, and I did not get the same like nuanced dynamic I got from the original trio.
And I think that's true. I think that holds throughout the rest of the program. There's like a bunch of weird shit that happens. Like I said, Kuttner fucking kills himself because he had to go work for Barack Obama.
He had to be the liaison for APAC communities and for the arts.
Yeah, so shout outs. There's like a whole subplot that I read up on like 13, who is played by Olivia Wilde, her whole deal is that like her family is dealing with Huntington's disease, and she like disappears for a bit, and later it's revealed that she like was in prison because she euthanized her brother who was like suffering from Huntington's disease. Just like wild soap opera shit, right? Like, you know, this is why stories should end early, right? Because you get into these weird spaces. But also like you wouldn't know this, but like the season 4 like opener is like House whittling down the applicants to take the 3 people's jobs, the original team. And there's like 40 of them, and it's like a Survivor style like contest. It's some like real tuning exam shit, and like it's so funny to me that that's what they did. But like you end up with Olivia Wilde, Cal Penn, and Dr. Taub, who I'm sure has a real actor name, but he's always going to be top to me. But yeah, like. Yeah, I think you're right. They don't have the same as strong dynamic as the original 3, but like, you know, they do weird and interesting shit. You know, maybe not as effective, but you know, I liked them because that's the series that I like. I knew them better than I knew the original 3 in some ways.
Right. Yeah. Well, we actually. So I'm looking over at our talking points. We actually kind of organically covered all of them. Did you have anything else?
No, I guess we did hit all of our talking points, huh?
Yeah, okay. Look at us.
We could go to our marketing minute.
It's like we've been doing this for 5 years.
Yeah, it's weird how that works, huh?
It hit me with our marketing minute.
So, all right, Layla, great news. We have been offered the opportunity to make 8 seasons of Salt television with a similar tone to House. There are a couple rules. It must be live action, and it must not be fantasy. It has to be grounded in the real world. Okay. What is the Mortified production studio going to pitch and produce?
I think we set this in a state department of transportation.
Oh?
Because I think it would be fun to have constant opportunities to deal with trucks and trains.
Interesting. Say more.
If you want a good bottle episode, put that shit on a train.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's easy. That's definitely like, oh, our main characters, they are doing some sort of inspection or maintenance and they get locked inside. And then they all have to like, you know, there's some passengers on there and they all have to work together to figure out. Like that's an easy one. That's a slam dunk.
It's a slam dunk, and then I think it opens up the opportunity for us for our overarching 8-season plot line to implement high-speed rail in the United States.
Okay, we can do this. All right, so we have the we have like sort of an Amy Poehler in Parks and Rec figure as our main character. She is maybe like a middle-aged woman working for the New York Department of Transportation. And what's her quirk? What's her hook, right?
Well, that's the thing. Is it the Amy Poehler or is it the Ron Swanson?
Maybe it's like she's like a serious, no nonsense, hyper competent,
hates the government.
Wait, a libertarian that's working for this Department of Transportation.
Yeah, well, you gotta get your bills paid.
Oh my God, Layla. I'm so glad you mentioned your and Rand shit earlier this episode because, of course, the fucking Fountainhead is all about trains, right?
It's all about trains.
Yeah, no, oh my God. This is actually just a big extended...
Are we just adapting the... Actually... Fuck it. We should con the Ayn Rand Foundation into giving us. Or I don't remember who has the rights anymore. We should con the estate into giving us rights to adapt the Fountainhead, and then we just like Game of Thrones it and just twist it all on its head in the last couple of seasons, and it's actually pro collectivism and pro government.
Yeah, no. This would be so good because it would start with somebody being like, "I'm a libertarian and I'm going to take down the government from the inside," and then like very slowly, they start building connections with their coworkers, right? There's obviously we have to have somebody who's like got blue hair and pronouns, right? Maybe that's their boss. That's really fun. We could do somebody who is like what other types of political people are there?
I just had a vision, almost like a prophecy. when you said a boss with blue hair pronouns, I immediately picture somebody like using gentle parenting techniques on their subordinates.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god. No, Mr. Ayn Rand libertarian. We don't say the taxes are... Oh god, what? No taxation without... What is the stupid thing that libertarians say about taxes?
I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Listen, if
taxation is theft, is what they say.
Is it? Oh, I don't know. I don't pay attention to libertarians.
Yeah, you have a better life than me. Something like that. No, it's like, we say that we need to share with everyone because otherwise we're all gonna fucking die. And things like that. It starts out like that. Maybe the end of the season 1 twist is like, they get like the opportunity to start working on a rail system that runs across the country, and like at the very last moment it looks like they're gonna be able to sabotage it, but then they decide, no, actually I'm gonna take this project head on, and I'm going to see if I can't prove why the rail should be privatized instead of governmentized. And then, like, we get, several seasons in, we understand, like, there's like a political complication, like Canada invades or something. And then there's a whole like military arc where they have to start building trains that go to Canada for reasons.
Can I pitch you something fucking insane really quick?
More than the one that we're already doing? Yes.
Yeah. No, hold on. I again, visions. I'm tormented by visions. So, okay, we have 8 seasons, right?
Right, of course.
Okay, so I think first 3 or 4 seasons, we do exactly what we just talked about. It's fucking Veep, it's Parks and Rec, it's, it's whatever. And then what I want to happen, and this is my pitch to you. Do you remember the part in Mulan where they get to that village that's been burnt down?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so what if... Do you remember all those trains that, like... there was a train that derailed in, like, Ohio?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That happens. And then this team of fucking clowns arrives on the scene of this, like, devastation, and the tone of the show completely flips, and then it just becomes this, like, earnest pursuit of building a competent rail system.
That's a fucking brilliant idea. Holy shit. Just like a complete vibe shift that's now just like, no, we need to make sure that it becomes like not a medical drama, obviously, but it has the same tone of like, we're saving lives now. This is, Layla, literally in my real job where I work for, I work in public health. I had this conversation with some of my colleagues. Like, I gave a presentation of being like, hey, we should be telling people we're fucking lifesavers because we are. And like, I would love to see that shift of like, hey, people who are public servants are actually doing incredible shit every day. That would be sick.
That is so funny because I have literally the opposite of that conversation constantly, which is where we have to remind all of our coworkers, hey, we are not saving lives or curing cancer.
Right.
No, exactly. This should be a pro public worker, pro, small d democracy, pro like people, weird people, everyday people coming together to do great things. I think we need that show right now.
Yeah, no. Oh my God.
It would teach people about high-speed rail, and then maybe we get some support for it, and maybe we could someday fund it. And then instead of it taking... I looked into it. It takes me... When I come up to visit you, it'll take me 8.5 hours to drive to you. Mm-hmm. The train would take 13.
Yes, I've done this too, where I've been like, okay, there's an Amtrak, line in the city I live. It would take me, something like, 15 hours to get to Buffalo. It's, ridiculous.
Terrible. But anyway, yeah, so I think once again we've hit $1 billion idea. Somebody just, throw money at us. We're good.
Yeah, honestly, you can give us a small $20 million budget. We'll start with, God, who is going to be our protagonist? Who's going to be the main libertarian person? And who's the boss? We need to do this face cast real quick.
Okay. Who's in the zeitgeist right now? Do you think Sandra Bullock would do a cameo?
A cameo, sure.
I don't think we can afford her for an actual role.
I don't think she can be a main character.
Do you think she could be, the president or something?
Yeah, I think we could get her for, occasionally... Yeah, we could get her for that. Sandra Bullock as president reads right to me.
Or maybe she has Pete Buttigieg's job. Maybe she's the Secretary of Transportation.
Right, that makes more sense, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I like that a lot.
Okay. Okay, so who's gonna be our like main? Who's kind of aloof? Who is like in mid-range movies? Who's kind of like aloof and.
Maybe it's just because I've been watching The Acolyte, but I've been thinking a lot about Manny Jacinto. And I wonder if he is our main character.
Oh my god. Can he... I feel like he has such an earnestness about him. But maybe I'm just thinking of him as Jason from The Good Place.
Right. Like, if you go ahead and if you do watch The Acolyte, you can see that he is like, he can have that menace that I associate with libertarians. So I think he can actually pull off.
I believe Manny Jacinto and his beautiful shoulders can do fucking anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever. Manny Jacinto's our beautiful main character. He wants to do his own stunts. Great. We'll figure out a way to get him to do his own stunts, too.
Oh, there'll be stunts in this program. Don't worry.
Yeah, at least in the first couple seasons, obviously, as we just said. And then who is, in terms of, like... God, who's just got, like, a good, maternal or paternal... energy to be the like
could be our blue hair pronouns boss.
Someone in their 40s or 50s, or I mean, I guess it could be any age because you could be a kind of a prodigy,
right?
And work your way up real quick.
I wish I knew.
Ooh. Oh my god, what is his name? What has he
been in?
Juno.
Michael Cera?
No. Well. No. The other one.
The girl?
Well, he transitioned.
Oh, Elliot.
Elliot Page. Thank
you.
Elliot Page.
Elliot Page. Actually casting a trans dude as the boss would be really good, actually. That would kick ass.
Blue hair pronouns. Listen, I'm sure we could ask him very politely to wear a wig.
Right. Oh, that would be good as hell, actually.
And then just, like, peeking out from behind Manny Jacinto, who's, like, there to be aloof. Oh, my God.
Oh, my...
It's coming together.
That would be really good. Okay, just give it, like, small $40 million budget to start. And from there, we can sort of start building it out. Listen, you live in New York, but not in New York City. We can film on site. They can crash at your place. It'll be fine. Just a big sleepover with some movie stars. It'll be great.
Oh my god, a sleepover with Manny Jacinto, please. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, this is a brilliant idea. We should be...
Oh my god, I just got a fucking memory that I did do that once. We were filming in Buffalo in a grain silo, and everyone from the crew crashed at my house.
What are you talking about?
When I was in college, we filmed in a grain silo here in Buffalo, and the whole production crew from my university crashed in my basement because my mom lives here.
That's fucking wild.
That's a real thing that I've done. It's happened to me.
God in heaven. Yeah, well, clearly we have the experience, execs, so, we'll start at 40 million, but that's where the bidding starts. And remember, Sandra Bullock does need to have a cameo, so we are going to start the bidding, increasing by tens. So,
yeah,
we'll hear your offers at mortifiedpod@gmail.com.
Yeah. Oh, and before we head into our show closer, we are one follower away on YouTube from 30 followers on YouTube, or 30 subscribers. So, like, hey, this is a great time to tell your friends about Mortified: The Friendship Quest. We're great. We're so fun. We're just, we review fucking whatever. You can send us also suggestions if you want us to take a look at something, to, again, mortifiedpod@gmail.com. Also, we have not had an iTunes review in a year, so... tell us you like us at iTunes. That would be very fun and delightful. Aaron, do you have any final thoughts before we go out?
No, I just this is the kind of media I'd like to make, is that media that affects young people and changes their brain chemistry, and 10, 15, 20 years down the line, they're still thinking about it, even though it's kind of goofy and silly, because its earnestness really grounds it in something that I just love House.
I fully agree. I'm so glad we revisited House, and that it has inspired us to watch Come From Away.
God, yeah. We'll see if we make that by the end of the year. All right. Well, Layla, when we are not making several different diagnoses, not only of ourselves and our friends, but also of the New York Department of Transportation, where can we be found on the internet?
Find me at LEYLSES on Blue Sky and Tumblr. Blur. Like I said before, I'm just vibes. I will be probably vibes until the end of September, and then I will figure out other shit. Aaron?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, Tumblr at Monster Factory Fanfic, Blue Sky at AA Voigt, and YouTube at AA Voigt, where I make video essays about tabletop games. Next one should hopefully be out around the same time that this episode comes out. It'll be about my favorite game designer, Emily Hsu, and their game Beach episode, which will be interesting examination of, similarly, like bottle episodes and healing, and why I think that game's not a cozy game, but it's still doing something interesting narratively. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshco from the album Filmmaker's Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshco.bandcamp.com. Layla.
Aaron.
How should we close this episode out?
Well, I changed my mind from the beginning of the episode. Aaron, my name is no longer Scalpel. You can call me Hazy.
We'll see you all next time. God. Oh, Dr. House is in the house, y'all.